Ecclesiastes chapter number 6, and we're going to begin a new chapter this morning, but it's actually a lot of the same old themes and things that we've been talking about, and that's all right. That don't bother me at all, being repetitive, because the Bible's repetitive. It just over and over, driving these points in our heart and in our mind. Ecclesiastes 6. I was reading this past week about Alexander the Great. How many have ever, I'm sure everybody's heard of Alexander the Great. As a boy, he studied under the great philosopher Aristotle. I'm sure you've probably heard that name, the ancient philosopher Aristotle. And he was, Alexander the Great was a brilliant young man. His dad was king, so obviously he got the best education that money could afford, and by the brightest. And he became a very brilliant young man. And he also had a quenchless thirst for world domination. He wanted to conquer all of the world, even as a child. And by age 30, he had conquered the known world. By age 30. Now, I just turned 30 this past December. When I read that, I thought, man, I'm not doing too good, I don't think. I feel like I'm coming behind. I mean, I just washed my clothes for the first time since I've been 30. I don't know. I feel like I'm falling a little bit short. By age 30, he had conquered all of the known world. And do you know what he did? Do you know what his reaction was when he had conquered all of the world? Do you know what he did when he reached his goal? The only thing that he ever wanted, even as a child, and he learned brilliant military strategies and all about philosophy and life and war and kingdoms and culture and all that. And he reached his goal, conquered the known world. Do you know what he did? Do you know what his reaction was? He wept. He cried. And it was not tears of joy. He was not happy. He was not fulfilled. He was not satisfied. He wept and he cried because there was no more lands to conquer. He felt like he had nothing else to live for, and in fact, he died mysteriously before his 35th birthday. He only lived just a few more years because everything that he'd ever wanted, he found it, but he found out that it did not satisfy him. Isn't that kind of like what we've been studying here in the book of Ecclesiastes? Solomon is a man who had everything. He had everything that anybody could possibly want. He didn't withhold himself from anything. If he wanted women, he got it. If he wanted wine, he had it. If he wanted to build something, he built it. He had all the money. Everything in the whole wide world was his, and it belonged to him. He had all the wisdom in the world, and yet he was never satisfied. And that's been the recurring theme of the book of Ecclesiastes, is that when your satisfaction depends on anything that is under the sun, when you cut God out and say, I cannot be satisfied with anything above the sun, it's got to be what's under the sun, what's in this earth and what's on this planet, what's in this world. And when that is what your satisfaction comes from, you will never be satisfied. You won't ever find happiness. You won't ever find joy, and you will never find satisfaction. The old ancient theologian Augustine, you may have heard of him. He's well known. One of his most famous quotes is this. Augustine said, he's talking to God, said, "Thou hast made us for thyself, O Lord, and our hearts are restless until it finds its rest in thee." And I tell you, that's exactly right. Augustine, he didn't have everything right, I don't think, but he had that one. He had that right. Our hearts are restless. We're born with a restlessness about us. We're born striving and seeking and looking and hoping. And the only place that you will ever find rest for your souls is in the Lord Jesus Christ. It is in God. And Augustine said, our hearts are restless until it finds its rest in thee. And as we read chapter number 6, you're going to find that it's filled with some of the same familiar themes about things that Solomon has seen and he has tried, and they do not satisfy him. And he sees people that have money, and he sees people that has a long life, and he sees people that has big families, and he finds out that there's not satisfaction in wealth, there is no satisfaction in even having a big family, and there's not satisfaction in living a long life. And he observes these things. In fact, I want to organize chapter number 6 here under 3 headings here. This will be kind of our big points here. Number 1 is we see his observations. Solomon is making observations. Secondly, we see his conclusions. And then we find out that Solomon ends this chapter with questions. He's asking questions. And I think that's interesting to me. In fact, that's probably where we will settle in and get to the questions part of this, because it's interesting that Solomon makes observations and then he draws conclusions from these observations. Having cut God out of his life, he's observing these things. He's not looking at God. He's looking at what's under the sun. And he's not coming to godly conclusions. He's coming to earthly, carnal, foolish conclusions. And he's the wisest man in all the world. And yet he ends up this chapter with more questions than he has answers. And can I tell you, that's exactly how you are and I am when we cut God out of our lives. Life makes no sense, and we have more questions than we do have answers. And I promise you, friend, all of these so-called worldly philosophers and self-help teachers of our day, and even some, they are that, but they hide themselves behind the title of a preacher. But all these people, they're just pushing worldly philosophies. Listen, I promise you, friend, they do not have the answers. They have more they leave us with more questions than they have answers. And that's exactly where Solomon is. He winds up and finds himself not knowing exactly what's going on. Even after he observes these things and he comes to conclusions about these things, at the end, he's just full of questions. I don't know what's going on. My title, I'm going to give you my title here. But it might make a little bit of sense, but it's only going to make sense when we get to that last point, all right? Here's my title, is Jesus is the answer. Because you're going to find, let me go ahead and spoil the end, all right? You're going to find at the end of this chapter, Solomon asked 3 questions. And that's what I want to get to here in just a minute. He asked them 3 questions. But he don't have any answers to it. But it's like when I was reading this and studying this, I wanted to scream through the page. I wanted to scream at Solomon. I know they can't hear you, but neither can the Braves. So they couldn't hear me last night either. I was hollering at the television, but it don't keep me from doing it, all right? And I know Solomon's dead, and I know he can't hear me, but I'm screaming at my Bible, say, Jesus is the answer. And so I thought, that's got to be my title this morning. Jesus is the answer. Solomon, that's what you're looking for. You will not find any rest for your soul. Our hearts are restless until it finds its rest in Jesus. Amen. Jesus is the answer. So we're going to get to Jesus here in just a minute. But let's kind of run through here. I'm not going to spend a lot. We're going to do the whole chapter, verses 1 through 12. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these things because a lot of these things we've dove into extensively. Even some of these things about money. Even last week, the whole message last Sunday morning was about money, the deceitfulness of riches. But first of all, verses 1 through 6, I want you to note Solomon's observations. Solomon's observations. Read verse 1 with me. Let's look at it. It says, there is an evil which I have seen. All right, so Solomon is observing things. This is not new. In the previous chapters, he had observations that he was making. But I want you to notice it's under the sun. That phrase pops up over and over again. He's cut God out. He's just looking at things that, from an earthly point of view, from a carnal perspective. He says it's common among men. All right, here's what he's observed. Number 1, verse 2, a man to whom God hath given riches, wealth, and honor, so that he wanteth nothing for his soul of all that he desireth, yet God giveth him not power to eat thereof, but a stranger eateth it. This is vanity, and it is an evil disease. Now, we'll just take it as we go instead of reading the whole thing. Number 1, the first observation that he makes is, what good is wealth if you don't have health? What good is wealth if you don't have health? Solomon observes some things that he sees, but he does not appreciate about life. He says it's an evil disease is what he calls it. He shows us again that the things people look to for satisfaction really don't satisfy. And let me go ahead and give them to you. He points out 3 things. Money doesn't satisfy. That was last week. We talked about that, but it comes up again here. having a big family doesn't satisfy. Living a long life will not completely satisfy you. All three of those things were marks of the blessings and favor of God. They were marks of a wealthy man. If a man had a lot of money, obviously he's wealthy. If a man had a big family, had a lot of children, a lot of sons, that was how many of y'all know in the Bible times there was a stigma upon a woman or a couple that had no children, and so it was kind of like you were an outcast in society if you didn't have any children. But if you had many sons and a lot of children, then you were considered very, very wealthy. And then also, which actually, that's kind of the opposite of the way I think of it. I think if I had more kids, I'd be more broke than I am right now. But anyway, wealth, money, and then if you lived a long life, I mean, that's what everybody wants to, right? Nobody wants to die. Everybody wants to live to be 100 years old, or even if someone's going to put it here, 1,000 years old. There was, in the Old Testament, the book of Genesis, Methuselah almost made it to 1,000 years, didn't quite. But in the day Solomon was living in, obviously men didn't live that long. That was a kind of an exaggeration, if you will. But he said, listen, I'm observing these things. If you could have all the money in the world, if you had all the sons in the world, and if you had all the time in the world, and you could live 1,000 years, he said, still, that would not make you completely happy. He said, but here's what I've seen. He said, first of all, I've seen people that have money, but they don't have the power to spend it. He said, God's given them wealth, God's given them money, but He's taken away their health. They can't enjoy it. It's like when I see an old man that has a Ferrari or a convertible or something like that, and I'm thinking, why don't I have one of those? I could enjoy that much more than he could enjoy it. By the time you have enough money to buy that stuff, how many of you guys know, you can't enjoy it like you once could if you had that money 30 years ago. Solomon said that's an evil disease. He said, what good is all the money in the world if you don't even have power to enjoy all those things? He's looking at life through carnal lenses, and he said, it's vanity. It's worth nothing. It's meaningless to have all the money in the world. And I kind of got a sense, and I kind of got a hunch here. I'll let you study it out for yourself. But I kind of got a hunch here that Solomon is thinking very personally when he's saying these things. I think Solomon's getting to that point of life where he's saying, I got all the money in the world. He said, but I don't have the health like I used to have, and I'm not enjoying these things. And he said, because of that, because I got money and I can't enjoy it, he said, life's not worth living anymore. That's what he says. And when your life is all about money, and that's all you want, that's all you think about, and that's all that satisfies you, then your old age and your failing health will become an evil disease to you, because you're not able to enjoy the money like you want to enjoy. But let me just kind of spoil things here and just say, but when your satisfaction is in Jesus Christ, it doesn't matter if you got any money, it don't matter if you got good health, bad health, it doesn't matter, because there is an eternality in your life. You think, what is going on here in this world? It does not last. It is not forever. But to Solomon, in his under the sun world, everything that is good and everything that could ever be good is all what takes place in this life. And if that's the way you live your life, you will be a miserable, miserable human being, as Solomon was at this point. What good is wealth if you have no health? All right, here's another observation. What good is family if you have no honor? If you have no honor. Look what he said in verses 3, 4, 5. If a man beget 100 children and live many years, so that the days of his years be many, and his soul be not filled with good, and also that he have no burial, I want you to mark that, I say that an untimely birth is better than he. All right, let's unpack that verse right there. Here's what he said. If a man has 100 children, he's got a big family. He's got 100 children, except he's not satisfied. That's what it means, his soul not be filled with good. That means he's not satisfied. You'll find that phrase coming up again. And then look at this phrase, and also that he have no burial. You know what that means? It means he's got 100 kids, but none of them love him. None of them love him. None of those kids appreciate him. None of those kids are willing to give him an honorable burial. That's a big deal about your burial, your funeral. That's a big deal for somebody, especially in these days in this culture. About that meant everything. That meant, does your family honor you? Obviously, even more so today. It's a big deal today, but even more so in this day, it was a family honor culture. It's about honoring the family and your family name and legacy and all these things. That's exactly how Solomon was living here, and he says, I have children, but none of them care about me. Now, was Solomon talking about himself? I don't know. Was he talking about just things that he has seen? I kind of think he's getting personal. That he have no burial. Here's what he said. An untimely birth is better than he. You know what that is? That's a miscarriage. That's a miscarriage. Here's what he said. He said it would be better to die at birth than to live a long life, have 100 kids, and none of them appreciate me. And none of them loved me. I'll tell you what, there might even be some people in here, you know what that's like to have children that don't appreciate you, they don't have anything to do with you, their relationship's not what it ought to be. And I'll tell you, if that is what your world is wrapped up in, family is a good thing. Family is a great thing. Family is a blessing. Family is a horrible God. It's a horrible God. Because your family will let you down. There's mamas and daddies that their kids grow up and get out of church and they forsake things they taught. And those mamas and daddies, they can't function anymore because their children was their God. It was their world. There's other people, they have a mother pass away or a father pass away or a family member pass away, and they hardly can function anymore. That family was their God. And I'll tell you what, family makes a horrible, horrible God. And whatever it is, and I've told you this before because it's been brought up before in Solomon's life, whatever it is that makes you want to lose your life, whatever it is that brings you to the point where you say, I don't even want to be alive if it's got to be that way. That's your God. That's your idol. That's what you worship. Some people, money is their God, and if they lose all their money, they don't even be alive anymore. You know, years ago, how many of y'all remember the name Bernie Madoff? Remember that name? Bernie Madoff, Ponzi scheme. I mean, there was people living and they thought they had millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars. And then when the whole Ponzi scheme collapsed, they found out they didn't have any money. Did you know there were several people that committed suicide? They ended their life when they found out they didn't have any money. They said, I would rather not be alive than be poor and to live broke. That was their God. Money makes a horrible God. Family makes a horrible God. Whatever it is that causes you, so man, if my spouse left me, I would kill myself. If my church split, then I would kill myself. If I'm not doing this by the time I get here, then I don't even want to live anymore. It's not worth going. Whatever it is that brings those thoughts in your mind, that is your idol, and you need to break it and you need to destroy it, and you need to put your trust and your hope in Jesus Christ, because He'll never leave you and He'll never forsake you. Money grows wings and it flies away. Your children may not turn out right. Your parents may disown you. Listen, your health may fail you. Listen, your power, your strength in your body, your abilities may leave you. You may not be able to do what you want. But listen, Jesus will never leave you and He'll never forsake you, and He's always there for you. And so when you put your trust in Jesus, listen, you want to live. Amen. Not fame, not fortune, not family, not finances. Put your hope and trust in Jesus. That's exactly what Solomon that's exactly what Solomon is saying right here. He's saying, it's better to I wish I'd never been born. Like, what's his name movie? It's a Wonderful Life. I wish I'd have never been born. Now, there's so many theological inaccuracies in that movie, so don't look at that movie but it is a good movie though. Said if I can't live my life the way I want to live it, if I can't do these things, I'd wish, in the circumstances of life just getting so tough, what did he say? He said, I just wish I never was born. That's where Solomon's at. What he's seeing. Could he be talking about himself? You know how when people say, hey, I got this friend who, sometimes they're talking about themselves. Maybe Solomon is, I don't know. And then verse 4 and 5 just talks about that miscarriage. He cometh in with vanity, talking about the baby that's stillborn, the baby that doesn't make it, the baby that dies at birth. He comes in with vanity and departeth in darkness, and his name shall be covered with darkness. He hath not seen the sun nor known anything. This hath more rest than the other. He said that baby gets more rest than the man who has children but no honor. What good is wealth if you have no health? That's what Solomon says. What good's family if you have no honor? What good's longevity if you have no happiness? He says that in verse 6. He says, yea, though he live 1,000 years twice old. That's 2,000 years actually. 1,000 years twice told. If a man could live 2,000 years twice, almost twice of what the oldest man in the Bible ever lived, Methuselah, 969 years. If you could live twice as long as that, but yet he hath seen no good, that means he's not satisfied, he's not happy with life. What good is it? What good is it? What good? I mean, if you're miserable, what's the difference between dying at 60 and dying at 90? If you're unsatisfied with life, what's the point of living longer? That's what he's saying. These are the observations that he's made. He said wealth, family, longevity, these are commonly looked to for satisfaction in life. He says, listen, what's the point? They don't bring satisfaction in and of themselves. There's something that can rob them of bringing joy to your life. How many of y'all still with me? Say amen. It's kind of dismal, isn't it? It's kind of, it'll get better. We'll get to Jesus here in just a minute, all right? Can y'all hang on and let me get you to Jesus? Is that okay? That's his observation. All right, let's come to the conclusion. What conclusions does he come to? When you shut out God, you shut out the one that makes all of life make sense, you come to some pretty strange conclusions about life. Some of these we've already seen before, so I'm not going to belabor them, but Solomon in his emptiness of life, he pretty much comes to the conclusion that having all these things is meaningless, it's pointless, and he's pretty much saying, what's the point? What's the point of having all the wealth, having all the family, and living a long life? What's the point of even trying to extend my life? He said, what is the point of all this? Number one, if we're all going to die anyway. And that's at the end of verse number 6. He says, do not all go to one place. Now that's not teaching all go to heaven or all go to hell. That's teaching that everybody goes to the grave. We all go to one place. It doesn't matter if you're rich. It doesn't matter if you're poor. It doesn't matter if you're healthy, unhealthy. It doesn't matter. Everybody's going to die of something. You understand that? Listen, everybody, all you getting on me about what I eat, listen, you're going to die of something too. I'd rather die happy. With a chicken leg in this hand and a slice of pizza in this hand. Amen. Just fill my casket up with a bunch of Skittles. Amen. Just fill it up. Let me die happy. Everybody's going to die of something. Everybody goes, what's the point? What's the point of living a long life? You're still going to die. If you live 2,000 years, you're still going to die. If you live 70 years, you're still going to die. We're all going to one place. What's the point of having all the money? Poor people die. Rich people die. What's the point of having all the kids? Listen, people with big families die. People with no families die. Everybody dies. What's the point? And then he says, what's the point of all this? Nobody's ever satisfied anyway. Look at verse number 7. All the labor of man is for his mouth, and yet the appetite is not filled. He said, a man, whether you're rich or whether you're poor, every man's working just to keep himself alive, put something in his mouth, but it doesn't matter what you eat today. Tomorrow, you're going to be hungry all over again. And you're never satisfied. That's what he's saying right there. Every time I eat a big meal, which is every time I eat a meal, I always lean back and I make a proclamation to Heather. I'll rub my stomach like this, my abs right here, and I'll just kind of put my hands right here. And I'll tell Heather, I said, I'm never eating again, ever, for as long as I live. That's what I say. I say that about every time. Of course, Heather, she don't even roll her eyes anymore. She don't even hear me. I think she's getting tired of me. But you know what? It's not true. Because like 3 hours later, I'm hungry all over again. And isn't that how we are? Never satisfied. And let me skip down to verse 9 because it's kind of the same thing. Solomon says, it's better is the sight of the eyes than the wandering of the desire. What does that mean? He says, it's better to be able to put your eyes on something that you have than to spend your life always wanting other things. Better is what you have inside of your eyes. But what he's saying is, this is a good, even in the midst of all this goofiness, it's a good little nugget of wisdom right here. What he's saying is, be content with what you got. It's better just be glad with what you have than to always, some of y'all, you're never satisfied with anything. As soon as you get something, you're already thinking of the next thing that you want. And your desire is always wandering all over. You got to have another car, another house, another cell phone, no more money, another vacation, another whatever. And nothing satisfies. Nothing's good. Next thing, next gadget, next gizmo. It's always something else. What a vain life to live. It's what he says. It's vexation of spirit. It's like chasing after the wind. You'll never satisfy. You'll never catch it. So what's the point? We're all going to die. What's the point? We're never satisfied. What's the point? He said in verse number 8, he said we all have to have the same necessities of life. Who cares who has more? We all need the same thing. But what hath the wise man more than the fool? What hath the poor that knoweth the walk before the living? Now, I did a lot of studying on that little verse right there. It's kind of hard to interpret, just to be honest about it. But I think what it's saying right there is, we all have the same necessities. The wise man needs things. The fool needs things. We all have to work for these things. The poor, everybody, we all have to work for what we have. You can only enjoy so much at one time. It doesn't matter if you have 100 changes of clothes. You can only wear one at a time. It doesn't matter if you have a pantry full of food or if you only have one little meal. You can only eat one meal at a time. What's the point? What's the point? Then he says, verse number 10, this is probably the darkest of all. He said, that which hath been is named already, and it is known that it is man. Neither may he contend with him that is mightier than he. Who's he talking about? He's talking about God. He's talking about the sovereignty of God right there. It's actually a perverted view of sovereignty. Now, I believe God's in control of everything. I believe that with all my heart. I believe God's a sovereign God. At the same time, I believe man's been given a free will, and God's sovereignty is so mysterious and so divine that his sovereignty never violates our free will. God could, but he don't. And man would love to violate God's sovereignty, but he can't. You got that? God is sovereign. Man has a free will. Man would love to violate God's sovereignty, but he can't. God could violate man's free will, but he won't. And he doesn't. It's amazing to me. But this is a dark place. We call it fatalism. When you finally just give up and say, what's the point of doing anything? What is to be will be. Shari, whatever. It's all just whatever. I'm just going to sit down, I'm going to roll over, I'm going to die. There's a lot of churches like that. There's a lot of families like that, a lot of people like that. Say, what's the point? What's the point of trying to make something with my life? What's the point of doing something with my life? What's the point of trying to accomplish something? Because God's stronger than us, and whatever's going to be is just going to be. God is a sovereign God, but if your doctrine of sovereignty leads you to fatalism, you have a perverted view of God's sovereignty. That's exactly where Solomon's at. He said, whatever. What's the point? He's mad at God. He's bitter at God. You see, Solomon has cut God out of his life, but he's not an atheist. Don't equate the two things together. Never equate, because Solomon references God over and over and over and over and over again, even in this chapter. Solomon knows God exists, but he has cut off that relationship with him. And he is living his life as if God has nothing to do with his life. He's not an atheist by no stretch of the imagination. But instead of hand in hand with God, he's at odds with God, trying to live his life in his own way and do his own thing in a rebellious way. What sad conclusions to come to about life. If you remember at the beginning of this study, there were three main truths that every person longs to know. Do you remember that? Origin, we talked about origin, we talked about destiny, we talked about purpose. Origin, where did I come from? Destiny, where am I going? Purpose, why am I here? Everybody needs to know those three things if they're going to have any significance in their life right there. And our society has told everybody, and when you cut God out of your life, here's how you fill in those blanks. You say, I did not come from anywhere. God didn't make me. And then when you cut God out of your life, you're saying, I didn't come from anywhere. And then if I didn't come from anywhere, that means I'm not going anywhere when I die. And if I didn't come from anywhere, if I'm not going anywhere, then that means my life means absolutely nothing. And what you see in this world today are people running around, chasing the wind. That's vexation of spirit. Chasing the wind, trying to find significance in a life where they have cut God out. And at the end of all that, and you may have a little fun in the beginning. There's a fun in the chase, and you maybe get a little money, and things are going well, but you'll finally come to these same conclusions that Solomon came to. Life is pointless. Life is meaningless. But I'm so thankful for my Bible. I'm thankful for the Holy Spirit of God that lets me know God created me. That's where I came from. When I leave here, I'm going back to God. And so if that's where I came from and that's where I'm going, guess what my life's about? My life's about God. God gives meaning to my life. And when you cut off God, you cut off your purpose for living. It's the whole point of the book of Ecclesiastes. We're made for Him. We're made for Him. His observations, His conclusions. All right, look at these questions, and I'm done. Sing there be... I got to show you this. Verse 11. When I saw this, it struck a chord. Sing there be many things that increase vanity. See that? What is vanity? Vanity is emptiness, right? It's the word that comes up over and over in the book of Ecclesiastes. It's the Hebrew word, I think you pronounce it Hebel or something, I don't even care. But it means emptiness is what it means. Soap bubbles. That's the idea there. Just nothing, just pop it. There's nothing there. That's what vanity is. And look what he just said. This is amazing. I underlined this, wrote this down. I underlined this phrase. Things that increase vanity. Well, no, hold on a second. Don't we live in a society that tells us that you got to have things to have more significance in your life? Everybody's measured, your significance in this life is measured by the things that you have. That's how society does. Isn't that right? More things that you have. What do you have? What can you do? If you have a nicer car, then you have a better status. You have a nicer house, you have better status. Nicer job, better status. Nice 401k, retirement, savings, more money, net worth. What do you have? Things make you significant. Solomon has all the things in the world, and he said, there be many things. They don't increase significance. He said that increased my vanity, my nothingness, my meaninglessness. He said, I got things. You can actually add things to your life. Listen now, here's what he's saying. This is amazing. He said, you can add things to your life that make you more empty. You can add things to your life that make you more empty. That doesn't make any sense, does it? But it makes all the sense in the world if you know what that's like. To have money and to have things and to have servants and pleasures and entertainment and buildings and businesses and all the things that Solomon had. Go back to chapter 2, read it all. Preached a whole message out of chapter 2 on dead-end streets. He went down pleasure and projects and all the, I can't remember all of them, but no satisfaction. And he said they haven't added anything except emptiness. That's amazing. Things that increase vanity. All right, here's his questions. He said, what is man the better? You know what that means right there? It just simply means, how can a man have profit in his life? How can he get better? And then let me just read these questions to you. Verse 12. For who knoweth what is good for man in this life? All the days of his vain life which he spendeth as a shadow. Who can tell a man what shall be after him under the sun? It's amazing. Here's what I underlined in verse number 12. You may want to do this. I'm going to give you this and I'm done. I underline the word who. For who? Y'all remember the title? What was the title? Who's the answer? Jesus is. Who knoweth what is good for man in this life? Jesus. Amen. How about that? Who could tell a man what shall be after him? Pick me, I know. You know, song says, I know a man who can. Listen, I can't help Solomon, but I know a man who can.
Yes, sir.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Jesus is the answer to the questions of life. Your life makes no sense when you take Jesus out of it. Jesus answers all these things. How can a man have profit in his life? Well, Jesus said in Mark 8, He said, whoever will save his life shall lose it, but whoever shall lose his life for my sake in the gospels, same shall save it. For what shall it profit a man if he shall gain the whole world and lose his own soul? Here's how Jesus answered that question. He said, what is the man the better? How can a man have profit in his life? Well, I'll tell you what Jesus said. Jesus said, if you'll lose your life, you'll find his. And that's the greatest profit anybody could ever have. Then he asked, who knows how a man can be satisfied in this life? That's what he's asking. Who knoweth what is good? When he uses that word good, that's the word. We've seen it back in this verse number 3. He talks about the man who had all the children, but his soul shall not be filled with good. And then we saw it again. Where do you see it? Verse 6. The man, he lives 2,000 years, yet he hath seen no good. You see that? Satisfaction. Where? So it's the same thing there in verse number 12. He said, what is good for man? Where can you find this good? Because it's not in money. Ain't no good there. And then in family, I can't find it there. And then in living a long life, I can't find it there. Where can you find this good? Where can you find this satisfaction? Oh, you can find it in Jesus, my friend. Oh, yeah, it's there. It's there. I love what Jesus said. He said, come unto me, Matthew 11, all ye that labor and are heavy laden. He said, and I will give you rest. That's good. That's like what old Augustine said when he said, our hearts are restless until it finds rest in thee. He said, take my yoke upon me, learn of me, I am meek and lowly in heart, ye shall find rest for your souls. My yoke is easy, my burden is light. John 10, Jesus told us that a thief cometh not before to steal and kill and destroy. He said, but I am come that they might have life and might have it more abundantly. That means that more abundant life. That means life above the commonplace is what that means. More abundant life. Who knows how a man can be satisfied in this life? Jesus knows. Your Creator knows. He made you. He knows what sustains you, and He knows what satisfies you. Who knows what comes after death? Well, Jesus does. I was reading this morning, I like what Jesus told His disciples there. He said, don't let your heart be troubled. Let not your heart be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many mansions. You know what He was telling the disciples? Don't get too discouraged down here. This life is not all about this life. There's another world waiting on us in heaven. In my Father's house are many mansions. He said, I'm going to prepare a place for you. I will come again and receive you unto myself. I'm glad this body may go to the grave, but one day, a blessed resurrection morning, I'm going to my new home. Amen. Thank God, thank God, thank God. I'm glad Jesus knows. Jesus is the answer to everything you're looking for and everything you're struggling with. What you're looking for is not a what. Quit looking for a what. I need another relationship. I need more money. I need a new job. I need a new car. I need another vacation. I need this. I need that. Quit looking for the what. You ain't going to find any satisfaction of what. Solomon said, who? He said, I need a person. He said, I need somebody to tell me. I need somebody to help me. Who can tell me these things? Well, I'm here to tell you, friend, Jesus can. He is the answer to every question of life. Let's stand together. Miss April, you come on around. I'm glad Jesus is the answer to everything you're looking for.